My name is Alex and I'll explain later. In episode 9, I sit down with my friend Rob. We talk about his time in Scientology, his drug addiction, when he got raided, the first Coachella, Burning Man, and more. Enjoy.
Pretty pictures.
All right, I'm here with my friend Rob. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me, Alex Buhin. How do you even pronounce your last name anyway?
Behunin.
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 Alex Behunin. I've known you for how long? I can never say your name correctly.
I don't get it butchered everywhere.
Behunin.
Where'd you grow up?
Where did I grow up? I was born on a naval base in Port Hueneme, California on December 2nd, 1970. I was conceived in Buffalo, New York, and my father was in the United States Navy. He was a Navy diver. And he was stationed to Port Hueneme, California.
That's good.
Yeah, stupid.
That's good.
Port Hueneme. But he was stationed there, and while my mom was pregnant. So while my mom was pregnant in Buffalo, they moved to Port Hueneme. I was born there, and I grew up in Oxnard, California.
I just want to get into it. So you were in Scientology for a little bit.
Yeah.
Tell me, what was your decision to go into it?
Scientology has a facet called the Sea Organization.
And how old were you?
I was 14.
Okay.
14. SEAC, like the ocean, the Sea Organization. I was, that's like the right arm of Scientology. They pretty much back up everything that Scientology does in the other organizations. It's kind of hard to explain. But, well, not really these days, because you can just go on A&E and watch this stuff. You know, and other Sea Org members and what they did. But how I got into it was my mom had got into it first. She started going to an org. Org is short for organization. That was here in Ventura. And taking courses there. Courses that were designed by L. Ron Hubbard. They were offshoots of Dianetics and Scientology. And so she was taking these courses because someone at her work had introduced her. And all I noticed being, 13, 14 was that mom was never home. Like, where are you going after work? She's like, oh, I'm going to these classes. I'm like, well, I want to go check on these classes with you. She's like, you really should come with me. And I just showed up one day and I started taking the first classes they offered, which were communication courses. Yeah, you played with clay. The reason you played with clay was because clay, you could make these figures to really get the full comprehension of what they were trying to teach you. And if you put it into a clay form, you totally understood it. That was their method. But so what happened after that, I was going to the courses in the Ventura org, and something happened. A really huge event had gone down, and this would have been in 1984, I think. I could be wrong on the date because people will probably Google this, but we were told that we had to go to the Hollywood Palladium because there was a very, very important announcement that Scientology was going to make worldwide. And being that we were Scientology members, and I wasn't in the Sea Org yet, I was just doing little courses in Ventura.
So were you doing school and the Sea Org at the same time?
Same thing. I'd be like going to your regular day job and then taking a course at VC or something.
Gotcha.
So we drove, my mom and I drove all the way to the Hollywood Palladium in Hollywood, and they made this huge announcement that L. Ron Hubbard had not passed on, he's not deceased, but he's made the choice to move into his higher level operating thetan where he no longer needed his body. And we were like, holy shit. Looking back, the guy died, you know what I mean?
But when you're 14, did you really believe this?
I was blown away. And what I saw, remember, this is in LA, so what I saw were a ton of Sea Org members there. Now, Sea Org members dressed like military people. They looked like cadets and military uniforms, and I was just so moved by that. I loved the idea of people dressed up and, you know, with military hats on and, you know, all their like insignia on their lapels. I'm like, who are those people? They're all, well, that's the Sea Org. I was like, I want to be one of those people. They're all, okay, well, we'll talk about that more when we get back to Ventura. So L. Ron Hubbard, also known as LRH, had died, but he passed on to like Operating Thetan number 19 or something.
To go see Xenu?
Whatever. You know, the whole Xenu thing is Operating Thetan number 3, OT3, or OT4, I think, is when you learn about Xenu. And I was never there. The OT levels are way up there. I was way. You can look this up on the internet. They call it the bridge, the bridge to freedom. And if you look at the bridge to freedom, way at the bottom is Purification Rundown, which is basically a drug sweat out program where you sweat all the drugs out you ever did. And then below that are all these like subcategories way down there. That's where I was. I was nowhere near. Right. So anyway, I saw these Sea Org members and I was like, wow, Mom, I want to be a part of that. And she's like, no, you're not leaving junior high school to go join. I'm like, my dad was in the picture. He wasn't. My dad had left when I was 7, so it was just me and my mom, and I kind of ran the house before my grandparents moved in. And somehow, some way, I and my recruiter, his name was Richard N. I'll give him some anonymity. Richard N. and I, you know, I mean, Scientologists are good talkers. You know, they can get their way. And he talked to her, and I talked to her, and the decision was made on October 31st, 1984, that I would leave for the Sea Organization.
So on Halloween?
On Halloween, yeah. Started my journey in Santa Barbara. We were in Santa Barbara for a Scientology Halloween party, which was like any other Halloween party. Everyone dressed up, you know. They gave out candy, but the next day it was like, okay, you're off to join Scientology, join the Sea Org, and that's where I started. Yeah.
So what did you do in Scientology? Because I've had my brain filled with bad shit.
Sure.
Like that Scientology is fucking.
Well, drama
crazy.
sells.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
It got monotonous. What I did, I worked in a division called the International Data Bureau, and I worked in a microfiche lab. So there were a lot of documents, and you know there was very little computer use back then, obviously. But we had computers, we did, and we had managed a way to take all these documents and squeeze them down into what's called microfiche, which people still use at the library. And I was in a microfiche lab, and that's what I did all day long. I was working in this microfiche lab. I mean, that was later on when I was there, but when I was first there, they put you to work. You know, sweep this, clean that. You're a grunt.
Well, where were you living?
Different places. I lived on a little like old Hollywood hotel called the Wilcox that Scientology had bought. That's where the recruitment area was. And we woke up at 6 a.m. and we were doing exercises right there off Hollywood Boulevard in Wilcox. They had us lined up in military style. We're doing exercises right there on the boulevard. It's weird. And then I graduated that, and I got moved over to another building that's on Fountain. People who are familiar with any type of Scientology, it's the big blue building that everyone sees on TV. I lived in that building for a good while, and then I met this girl, and it's cool. I guess I can talk about it. I met this, which is interesting. The girl I met was my recruiter's daughter.
Oh wow!
So Richard N., the guy that recruited me, he had a daughter. It's actually a stepdaughter. It wasn't even his real daughter, but she was just smoking hot Armenian girl. You know, she was like a whole 15 years old, and I was like 14. I'm in love with you. And inside the Sea Org, they're really big about like no drugs, no sex. You got to be married. You know, like kind of old school like Christianity, like fundamentalist Christianity, just right to the core.
Right.
And we're like, well, we want to have sex. I think I'm in love with you. You have no idea.
It's like 14 years old.
Yeah, you don't know. She was more in tune with her feelings than I was. I don't know what was going on. I just knew I liked her a lot and I wanted to have sex with her. And so I managed somehow, or we managed somehow to get me an old, not an old, I'm sorry, I'm getting, what's the word here? Emancipation?
Yeah.
So,
I think so.
Emancipated. Yeah. Anyway, you get the rights of an 18-year-old. That was done first, and then a judge, an LA County judge, had to approve an underage marriage. And the only way he would do that was if his secretary, right, talked to us first, and she approved it. So whatever, if she approved it, because she would do the interview, if she approved it, she'd give it to him, and he would just, seal it and say it was okay. And so we met with this woman. Now, get this, though. In Scientology, when you're getting married, they don't care what fucking age you're getting married, right? And they made a big stink of it, and they were just like, we rented out this, like, one of the buildings we had. It was called, it's an old chateau, Chateau Marymont. It was built in, like, the early 19th century, and it's right off, the 101 freeway. It's called the Scientology Celebrity Center.
Okay.
Looks like a castle. And I actually got a chance to live in that building for a short period when John Travolta was coming and doing his auditing. And if you don't know what auditing is, I'm not going to go into it, but just where you talk to someone and you hold these cans in your hand, But prior to that, Scientology had given us the whole back lot. It was gorgeous back there. They had a big gazebo, a lot of trees, a lot of plants and stuff. So they'd planned all this big wedding, but we weren't even approved to get married.
Right.
And I kind of lied to my dad back east about getting married, so I couldn't get him to sign anything. But my mom was kind of gullible, so me and the right people in Scientology got her to sign the paper. And Chantel's parents, they were Scientologists, and they were living there in LA, so they easily signed. We did this interview with this lady, the judges.
Do you remember any of the questions that lady asked you?
No, but I remember them being very difficult to answer. So she looked to Chantel for a lot of the answers. And at one point, she goes, I don't think this is going to be a good fit because I'm not really feeling it from you, Robert. I'm not feeling what? And then Chantel, played the game, right? She's like, but I love him, and started crying, and I guess that won her over. So the day that we got our marriage certificate, I guess, approved, was the same day as the wedding. Gnarly. So we were out of there by 11 a.m., got it approved finally, and we had a big party, a big, big wedding, and then my friend Troy Tilkins, Troy came down. He was my best man. I was 15 years old. I have the pictures too.
That's such a trip.
And we were married and we had sex. And we lived with her parents in one of the Scientology buildings. And I worked in a microfiche lab.
So was your mom in Scientology with you?
She wasn't in the Sea Org.
Okay.
Remember, I was in the Sea Org, but she was a Scientologist back here in Ventura.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And I made some mistakes. And when you make mistakes in Scientology, they demote you and they put you on a thing called the RPF, which is the Rehabilitation Project Force.
What kind of mistakes did you make?
I didn't know. I wasn't into the principles of marriage. So, my hormones were raging and anything was doable at that point.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So I got into a lot of trouble with different people. And they're like, this guy can't keep his pants on. So we need to, you can't act out sexually around here like that. So we're putting you on the RPF, the Rehabilitation Project Force, which sucked because you had to run everywhere you went. Yeah, it was weird. You couldn't walk. You had to anywhere you went, you had to run. And they put you in the strangest places. They put you in the hardest places that no one else would clean, like underneath the kitchen, down in the basement, underneath where the kitchen was, where the roaches were. You were cleaning that. You were cleaning basements. You were in just this weird. And that's where it got its bad rap from, because you were treated like complete shit. And you had to wear this armband, an orange armband, so everyone knew on the campus that you were an RPF person. You were a fuck up. And they treated you that way.
Oh.
So while everyone else is eating steak, you're eating rice and beans.
So how long until you were like, fuck this?
Well, I got lucky, so people trip out because I was kicked out of Scientology, which is rare. And the proper term that Scientologists use is called a fitness board. I got fitness boarded out. Because while I was on the RPF, I found someone else to have sex with. They're like, you can't do that. You just got to go. And they were thinking about like sending me to like Florida, Clearwater, Florida, where like all the big OT level auditing is done, operating thetan auditing is done. And someone high up's like, no, we just need to get him out of here. So I got fitness boarded out. And so this would have been early 1986. All of a sudden, my mom gets a phone call from me. I'm like, you got to come pick me up. She's like, what are you talking about? Where's your wife? I'm like, I don't know. Where are you? I'm outside. She's like, what? So she picked me up. And I was out of Scientology in 1986. That was it.
And then did your mom continue to do Scientology?
Yeah. She went what's called Clear. Clear is like in the middle of that bridge I was discussing earlier, before the operating thetan. Before the OT levels, there's a mid one called Clear. Apparently, Charles Manson went clear at one point. Yeah. What does that tell you? So she went clear. But yeah, kind of like after that, she kind of got out of it and got back to a normal life.
Did your wife?
It was tough. That was a tough one.
And
then... the story is so long about what happened after that, because I was a mess. I was in so much pain. Right. I cried for a year because I was missing her, missing that life, and missing my friends. And I was just thrown into this, what they called, Scientologists called anybody who wasn't a Scientologist a WOG. W-O-G, which I forgot what WOG stood for. So if there's any Scientologists listening, you know what I'm talking about. But I was in WOG life all of a sudden. And I'm now a sophomore, right, in high school. I didn't know what was going on. And I just failed classes miserably. I didn't fit in anywhere. Crying all the time. Didn't know who I was. You're young. Right. So, but your question was about her. Yeah, I didn't see her for a while.
And then when did you guys divorce?
She did an annulment. I did have contact with her maybe about a year or two after I got together. My friend John Winstead, him, myself, another guy named Michael, and somebody else. I drugged them down to LA because I wanted to see my wife. So we took our friend's car, and I met up with her, and she was living in an apartment all of a sudden, like off campus, but she was still a Scientologist, and it was just a weird scene. And that was the last time I saw her, and I wouldn't see her again for another 38 years.
Jesus Christ! Is she still a Scientologist?
No, she's actually on a few episodes of that. What is it, Leah?
Oh, really?
Leah what's her name?
Leah Remini.
Remini, yeah. On there, and her whole family got out.
It's a fucking trip.
Yeah. I can tell the story for days, And then it sucked at one point in 1992, and I was just completely messed up on methamphetamines, and I was having one of those real down emotional moments. I somehow, this is before Google or anything, I somehow managed to get the phone number of where she was working and got her on the phone. And I'm like, well, it's me. She's like, I don't want you to ever contact me again. What you did to me was so painful, and I had to do a lot of therapy after you, and I knew you would contact me someday, but don't ever contact me again. And she was rough, man. And then it would, like I said, it would be 30 plus years later that she would apologize for that conversation.
Fuck.
Yeah, gnarly. Not that I was doing any better, but I was just hurting. I'm like,
when did you get into drugs?
Well, that's really what the catalyst was.
Really?
That was the beginning right there. It was around the sophomore years when I started. I needed some relief.
Right.
I didn't fit in. I mean, just like I wasn't a special case. It was like anybody else being in high school. But when you lose some stability and you don't have a direction,
and it's like your first heartbreak, fucking
oh my God,
it kicks you in your stomach.
It ripped me apart. Crying for a year. I can laugh about it now, but at the time it was devastating. Yeah. And I needed, I didn't know what I needed. And I needed to fit in somewhere. And I was in high school. I didn't know, would I be the kid that would be reading in the stairwell? I don't know. Would I be a jock? Not really. They didn't have a surfing program, which I would have joined if they had one. But I just didn't know. I knew some people from, when I grew up, but high school changes everything.
Right.
You know how it is. Grade school, we're all good, and junior high, it's still good. But when you get into high school, it's a completely different facet, and your friends aren't really your friends anymore because they're hanging with that group now. So I met a guy named John Ortega. He changed my life. John Ortega. Yeah, he took me to my first punk rock show. Yeah, and it started from there, and that's when I started getting into partying, meeting people, hanging out, with the White Amy crew, going to shows, meeting people who were musicians, and it just kind of went from there. And everybody was doing something, and being that I'm an addictive personality, I slowly got into what took me down.
What was your drug of choice? Were you meth?
Yeah, methamphetamine. That's what brought me to my knees. I mean, I drank like anybody else, and I wasn't really a pothead. I never really cared for pot. And people to this day laugh at me and they go,
Coke.
I loved Coke. Who didn't like cocaine? But nobody could afford it.
It's expensive.
You have to do a lot of Coke and have to have a good time. And yeah, you could do an eighth of an inch of a blast of really good crystal meth, and it would just get you going for 4 days. You're like, damn, how much was this? $5, So yeah, I got into that, unfortunately.
So punk music, what is it about punk music that you love? What
it's a release. It catered to an anger that I didn't know how to express, and it catered to a thought system that I felt was complementing what I was feeling inside. It was anti-authority, fuck this, fuck that, but in a kind of congruent way that was unified but disorganized at the same time. The lyrics were things I'd never heard before. Grew up listening to Kiss and AC/DC and then Bon Jovi later on, all these different things that were talking about love and girls. And I could relate, but I couldn't relate because I was feeling so much anger. Being young as it was, and being in Scientology, and being kicked out, and being an RPF member and running everywhere, and just feeling like this, and then finally someone gets on a microphone and is like, fuck yeah! And I'm like, oh, that resonates with me. And it resonated. And John Ortega, who I mentioned, took me to my first punk rock show, and when I saw my first, slam pit, some people call it a mosh pit, I knew I was home. Being in that controlled chaos felt good.
So, and do you still get the same feeling to this day?
Absolutely. I don't have the body for it. I run out of air pretty fast. You know what I mean? But I to this day, I still go. When I do go to shows, I stand right there alongside of the pit and the stage, so I can kind of watch the stage and see the band members, but I can watch the pit at the same time. And every once in a while, I'll jump in for a few rounds, and I'm just, after about 3, But no, I still love it. It just feels good. It's been my thing. But over time, that being my teenage years, and then now I'm like with anything though, you learn to appreciate music and not diss anything. I mean, I have an opinion about every music, but I like a lot of stuff now. That at one point in my life, if it wasn't punk, it wasn't music.
Right.
That ain't punk rock. Rah!
Yeah, it's punk music's I just can't. I don't get it.
It's okay.
Yeah.
And it isn't for everyone, and that's good because punk rock is very mainstream now because there have been, as we know, a lot of bands who have brought it into the mainstream, and a lot of producers, but it's not meant for everyone to like. It's like Burning Man, right? Not everyone's going to make it at Burning Man. Not everyone should go to Burning Man, right?
Right.
It's not for everyone. Disney's for everyone. Everyone should experience Disney. Should everyone experience a slam pit? No. Should everyone experience what it's like to shoot heroin? No. But some people do. I don't know. It's just one of those things it's not for everybody. It wasn't meant to be mainstream. It like I said, it resonated with me because it filled a void. And I could lay down in the middle of the night and listen to just, Dr. No. Just screaming his head off about, plug in Jesus. And I would just be laying there quietly sleeping because it was soothing, not to this day. Now I just listen to it while I'm driving, but I can't listen to it at night, laying down, listening to Minor Threat or having Bad Brains scream in my ears or something. It doesn't work.
Tell the story about when you got raided.
The raiding story? Yeah, the raid is cool.
Oh, wait, actually before that, what was an average day like as a drug dealer? Like, just give me.
I was sad. I was a pathetic drug dealer.
Just give me an average day.
Well, the day never started in the morning. The days began at 11 o'clock at night. That's when I started my day.
Okay.
And we had pagers back then, so we had to use codes. This is not exciting stuff, but, I was a small-time meth dealer, and to me, getting a 16th and breaking that up into quarters was like my thing. And I got sloppy at the end. I got sloppy selling to pretty much anybody and trying to re-up. But the problem was I was my best customer. And I just couldn't stop really. I was only a drug dealer to really satisfy my needs and try to make a profit out of it, and it just got pathetic. I mean, an average day would, like I said, starting at 11 o'clock and being up all night thinking you're going to miss something. Yeah, it's like, Sunday at 4 a.m. What are you going to miss? You know what I mean?
And then were you a super, paranoid?
Very. When you didn't get much sleep, yeah, absolutely. I remember one time, and I've shared this from different forums and podiums, but I remember laying down on the ground once because I heard my roommates talking behind my back. And I got my ear to the ground, and I would listen, and they were just talking so much crap. I laid there for about an hour, just trying to muster up the courage to face them and confront them and talk to them about it's not okay. And somehow I just did, and I opened up the door and I ran out there to confront them, and nobody was in there. But what it was the TV was on, right? With the channel off, it's all shh. So that shh in a paranoid meth addict's mind is voices. You're a piece of shit. Oh, fuck that guy. Shh. So I was really embarrassed of myself. Wow, I laid on the ground that long.
That's fucking hilarious.
It sucks.
What's the longest you've ever stayed up?
Only 4 days. The body will shut down. Right. It does. I remember when there was this punk venue called the Mayfair Theater in Ventura, and we had a lot of punk rock shows there, and they were going to close it down. The city wanted to close it down because the residents were like, this is getting out of hand. All these punk rock kids and rock and rollers are out there and breaking bottles and drinking. So we went to the city hall to keep the Mayfair open, and I remember being there during some of those early city hall meetings to keep the Mayfair open. And I remember one time my body just shut down. It was I was on a 4-day run, and I was sitting there, and I just completely, just picture someone unplugging you if you were a robot. I shut down for probably a good 20 minutes, and I woke up, and everything was still going on. They were still talking, and I felt so energized. I'm like, wow, I just got I felt like I got 20 hours sleep, but it was 20 minutes. Pathetic.
Tell me the time you got raided.
So the raid was a good thing for me. I was raided by the police in August 1994. And I was at the lowest part of my addiction, really low. And I remember talking to my friend who was in the room that night, and I said, I go, man, let me tell you something. If they were to do a test on me at the Camarillo State Hospital, which it was then a hospital and not the university, I go, I would pass that test with flying colors that I am a completely insane person. And he's like, you're freaking out, man. You're freaking me out. And I'm like, yeah, I'm freaking you out. I'm freaked out too. I was out of it, you know what I mean? The paranoia had really gone into a psychosis. And he finally left, and I remember kind of praying, the drug addict prayer. I'm like, God help me, because I don't know any way out of this. I saw a very, very bleak future ahead of me. So somehow or another, I did pass out, and I woke up the next day, and I felt better. So I made a phone call to my connection, and he wasn't there. So I decided I was going to wash my car, and I had a 1962 Dodge Dart with a slant V. It was a beautiful car, and I could only, as you know the story, the only pants I wanted to make these shorts, so I cut these jeans really, really short on accident, and they looked like Daisy Dukes on me, and I was skinny. I was down to probably 140, which is really tiny for my frame. Actually, I thought I looked good, but you know. And I had this slingshot on, otherwise known as a wife beater, and I was washing my car, you know, just these Daisy Dukes, and I went back in to make another phone call to my drug dealer to try to re-up, you know, and I'm on the phone with him, and all I heard was like this, like bang, right, and everything from that point on was like slow motion, and it felt like ninjas were jumping through like the windows, and right in front of me was down the hall a little bit in my room. There was like this door, like that got kicked in by this person in a black uniform, and there was all this like screaming and yelling and screaming, and like the thing that occurred, the thing that happened was like this guy who I mean, he was like the biggest police officer I've ever seen in my life, right? And his name was Officer Gonzalez from the Oxnard Police Department, and he put a gun in my face that looked like a fucking hand cannon, and he's screaming, and he's like, get on the floor, get on the ground, motherfucker, get on the ground. He's screaming, and I'm like, you know, I'm up 4 days, right? It's like 4 days again, I'm up, and all like the combination of like I'm so busted and all the paranoia that the only thing that occurred at that moment is I completely just I passed out and fainted. Right. And yeah. And that was it, man. And I came to with handcuffs on and laboratory material in the house. They were testing the meth. Place was a disaster. My roommates, who weren't even part of the drug scene, they were actually in 12-step recovery, believe it or not, living with them. They were getting arrested because it was a drug house as far as the police were concerned. You know, one girl, she was dating a Hell's Angel, and she's like, I'm gonna get the HAs after you. I'm like, no, don't do that. And the cops are all, be quiet, you know, and I'm scared, and she's screaming and they're screaming, and I'm in my Daisy Dukes. I'm sitting there. I'm 140, right? 140 pounds, and they're going through stuff, and it was just a fucking disaster. It was a disaster.
Was this the first time you had been arrested?
To that degree, I'd been busted for like, you know, minor in possession of alcohol.
Gotcha.
You know, not really. No, not even. Not like no.
Well, this is like fucking.
I was terrified. And it was interesting, though, when I woke up on the ground, as I was like laying on my stomach after I'd passed out, I came to still being on my stomach with the handcuffs on me. And there were two things that happened in my life at that moment. The complete paranoid, terrified Rob, like I am so incredibly busted. I've never been in this much trouble in my life. I'm going to hell. And there was like this other part that was like hope. Like, whew, like I'm out. I am out, man. Like God answered that prayer. Here I was, God help me, I don't know what to do. He's like, well, I'll help you all right. But boom! You know. So it was a weird place to be in. Like, thank God it's over, but now I gotta face the music, you know. Went on to go to jail, went on to go to trial. I didn't go to trial. I pleaded out with a felony. Possession sales, which is still on my record to this day. Disgusting. I should get that taken off. But it's because it's sales, I can't just get like prop something.
Oh, really?
None of the propositions will cover a drug sale. It has to go to the governor or something. But I'm sure somebody out there can maybe help me with that if you're listening. Oh. It was heavy.
How long did you do in
I didn't do much time, actually. I'm pretty lucky. I ended up getting a small sentence, 9 months. I ended up doing like 6, Yeah, I didn't rat at anybody. I wanted to well, I didn't know what was going on, so I called my friend Dave Levine. He took a phone call, a collect call, and I'm like, hey, the police came to visit me, and they said if I, tell them who I was selling to or who I was getting my stuff from, maybe they'll be lenient during court. And Dave was just like, dude, let me tell you something. Fuck those cops. Don't tell them a goddamn thing, bro. What are you thinking? Just yelling at me. He's like, you did the crime, now you do the time. He's like, what do you want to do? Spend the whole rest of your life looking behind your back? He said, don't tell those cops shit. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Don't fucking say anything. So cops came the next day. This is all in county. The cops came the very next day, and they're like, oh, so do you want to tell us who you were talking to? The judge would be very lenient. And I'm like, I can't talk to you. That's all I said. They're like, oh, playing that part, huh? I'll plead to your felony. But I didn't say anything. I did my time, and I cleaned up for a short time. And it would be, unfortunately, a few more years before I really found recovery, 12-step recovery. But that was the catalyst of the start, getting busted and going to jail, because that first time being in jail, you're on probation. And I anybody that knows who's on probation while you're using, and if you're a drug addict, you're in trouble. You're going to violate every 5 minutes.
Right.
So I got violated, and I went to jail, all the way down the line. I kept going back and forth. And that was my life for a good while. Ugh. 94 to 96 was just jails. While trying to play in a punk rock band. I was in a band called Clenched Fists with a few guys. And we had good music, and I thought we were good. And
what did you play?
I was the vocalist, actually.
Oh,
I yelled my lungs out the best I could. And Forrest Lorenzana played guitar, and Maury played bass, and Donovan Coffey played drums. Now that band is still alive today with a new singer, with Joe Rivas, called Out of Trust. Very good band, wonderful, great musicians. They're just so good. But back then we were doing Clench Fist, and I think maybe we could have gone somewhere if I had stayed out of jail. But who knows?
Right.
We were all messed up at the time, but there were for good times. It wasn't all bad, but yeah, that raid was definitely the start of something, because I didn't know where I was going. Because at the end, the people who I was hanging out with at the end, Alex, were people who were using intravenously, shooting meth. I had never been around that before. I'd never done that. But I'd get people coming in, real skinny people, and they'd come in with almost like briefcases. They'd buy some meth from me, and they're like, hey man, can I use your bathroom? And they'd be in the bathroom for an hour and a half. I'm like, what are you doing in there? I'm almost done. And one guy finally opened up his little briefcase. Actually, it was an ammo box. One of those ammo boxes. He opened it up, and he had all these needles in there. He's all, this is the way to do it. And I was thrown off by that. But there was a part of me, being a dope fiend, how much more can you really get off on meth?
Right. And
he seemed pretty he's like, dude, I can have an orgasm just shooting this stuff up. Mom, what? And 2 days later, I got raided. Damn it. That's my old life.
Right. Tell me about Coachella, the early days of Coachella. When was the first time?
First Coachella was in 1999. I got really lucky with that because, it was the first one and no one had really heard about it. And Golden Voice had put it out. There was a buzz going around as this was going to be the first, outdoor music event on this side of the continent. Not the first. There was stuff happening up north, but really for Southern California. Right. Yeah, and they managed to pull off a headlining with Rage Against the Machine and Tool, and I was into them. And I didn't have a ticket. I wasn't going to go. It was just going to be another festival that I would just miss, another concert. My best friend, MB Hanrahan, who you've interviewed on your podcast before, was a very dear friend of mine. She happened to get tickets, and she got tickets for her and somebody else at the time. And this person that she had asked couldn't go or couldn't make it. I didn't really know MB at the time, but MB kind of wanted to meet me as much as I wanted to meet her because we'd seen each other at the meetings and stuff. And I was kind of trying to get into her circle, and I got lucky. And she goes, well, you seem like somebody that's got some stamina. She said, would you like to go to this music festival? And I was like, would I like to go to this music festival? Absolutely. And at the time, it was just another concert that just happened to be outdoors, happened to be somewhere that was far away in Palm Springs. It wasn't like Coachella that we know it today because it was the first one. Right. This is 1999, and they had it in the summertime. So the summer in Palm Springs, you know what that's about. It was 115 degrees out there. We were dying. It was
brutal.
Brutal's not even the word for it. It was so incredibly, devastatingly hot. And there were water bottles that were a sea of water bottles. I remember the sea of water bottles being all over the Indio polo fields. But that was probably one of the best shows I'd ever been to. And that was my first connection with MB, doing something. Considering that MB and I have done so many trips together, that was our first bonding experience, was this show.
Trip out.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I'll say one thing about the show that I remember specifically, that it was like Sunday night, and it was Rage Against the Machine. They were going to go up there, and Zach De La Rocha he was sick. He had the flu or something, but he was still up there, right? And Maynard from Tool was kind of hanging out at the sidelines, and was going to kind of help him sing certain songs. And so there's always that, a good, 40 minutes before the band's going to go up, and people, the crowd is starting to like move up, and you see the backdrop, and the band's not up there yet. And the crowd's getting bigger and bigger. And MB is standing right next to me. She's right next to me for like the good whole time, 40 minutes. And the crowd's getting, now where everyone's just like shoulder to shoulder, right? Getting excited, It's like waiting in line at Magic Mountain, right? You're waiting in line because you're going to get on that ride. That's going to happen. And then they walk up there and they're like, what's up, Coachella? We're Rage Against the Machine. Boom! The song started. The crowd... We're talking, there must have been, in our general area, there must have been 9,000 to 10,000 people just in our area, right? At the front of the stage. The entire crowd lifted off its feet. Lifted literally like a foot off, because everyone had jumped, right? And MB just got kind of, boom, carried away. And she got carried away, like, boom, down the aisle, away. And I lost her like that. And it wasn't a mosh pit, it was just a sea of people moving in unison and non-unison, and like I said, controlled chaos. But I couldn't find a way out because I wanted to kind of get out after a while. I couldn't breathe, and it took me so long to walk through just people fucking pushing, shoving, loving, screaming, yelling. Rage is going off. This is 1999. It's like it's like 10:30 at night, and it's just this sea of people just. And it took me probably a good, I sort of got 10 minutes to get through a crowd that wasn't moving. And somehow or another, I found MB, of course, eventually. But and apparently, Golden Voice, I guess the company that put it on, Golden Voice, apparently they went broke from that. Like, they lost money for that whole get down, and it would be another 2 years. So there wasn't going to be a 2000 Coachella. They had to skip that year. So the next Coachella is actually 2001. And MB and I went to every single Coachella from 2001, 2, 3, 4. We skipped, I think, 5 or 6. Beastie Boys had played. We skipped that one because we were snowboarding out in Tahoe. Went on to do about 12 different Coachellas. And by then it was like super commercialized, you know what I mean? What Coachella is today, where it's easily going to run you like a $1,300 weekend.
How much was it back then, like the first concert?
I think the tickets were like $150. I think they were.
Wow. They
weren't much. You'd have to probably ask MB. She'd probably go, no, they were $200. But if they were $200, that was it for the whole weekend. And you could, it was new. So the hotels didn't know what was going on. They're like, oh, some event. Okay. Now they're hip. They know that a certain part of the year between Coachella and Stagecoach, that they're going to raise their rack rates 100% to get people in, because they know people will pay that. Back then we were staying in like Motel 6s, and I managed to pull off some pretty nice hotels because I was working at Verizon at the time, and I had these commission points that I can get hotels. So we stayed at like Hyatt's and Marriott's. It was nice for a long time.
And then finally, talk about Burning Man.
I can only say for Burning Man, I can say this. It's like trying to describe a color to someone who's never seen blue. You can watch things on YouTube now and get an idea. For me, it was absolutely was a grand experience.
Well, when was the first time you went?
I don't remember. 2005, I think. Danette Banier let me borrow her RV, and took a MB, and MB brought along. Well, I went with MB and Steve Knopf and their artists, and it was my first time there, and I don't know. It's really hard to put into words. You know what I mean? Anyone who's been there knows what it's like. The playa is something incredible to experience. The art is incredible to experience. And, here's the cool thing is that, Burning Man, there is that big undertow of drug involvement, drug use there, and psilocybins and LSD, whatever you're going to do. But I was clean the whole time. I was clean I've been to 3 Burning Mans, and they've been just as wild experience as ever. Mm-hmm. Just to see that kind of like experiment in community, like really coming through, to see art and to see people, I don't know, uninhibited. It's amazing. It's an amazing experience. And I was lucky enough to meet the founder, Steve Harvey, I think his name is. I met him through MB, of course, and through Steve. And I don't know, I could probably put a list of things together.
What do you do?
Get your bicycle out and start riding down the roads. Just start riding down. There's all these roads and avenues and streets, and you look at other people's camps and you say hi to people and you admire their art. And that's just in the city. The city's big. It's a big city. I think it's like a mile across,
Wow.
And it might be even longer. Then you've got the desert, the playa, where there's art structures out there, and you just drive up to them, and some are lit up at night, and you admire them, and then you'll ride your bike you'll hear some music, and you'll stop, and you'll see people dancing, the music you like. And you start dancing, and people are like, yeah, and they're nice, and you're dancing with people you don't know. And they're asking you, are you hungry? And you're like, okay, cool. And they feed you. And luckily for us, being in the 12-step program, there's a whole camp that's dedicated to the 12-step movement.
Oh, wow.
That makes it easier to be in that environment where you feel like, okay, I got my recovery in today. I can deal with being in this Burning Man kind of, environment where people easily, put, vodka and grapes. But, an everyday event, any day, an average day, wake up in the morning and, make some breakfast. Luckily, if you have an RV, you got it going. Some people camp outside, get your breakfast going on, and throw some, sunblock on, and get on your bike and just cruise around and look, because it's incredible. Each camp is different. Go even further out in the playa where you haven't seen. You're like, oh my God, there's a piece of art way the hell out here, way out there. And the whole build-up is for the weekend because the man burns at the end of the week. And everyone from every camp gathers for that. You gather for the man to burn. And that's an incredible sight to see. Because everyone's there. And remember, these are people who, are art folks who light up everything. Like you take an average bicycle. I mean, no one ever just rides a bike with one light on it. It's like you do it up.
Right.
And this is your opportunity, even for like the layman who doesn't know anything about art, just to go for it. Like fully express yourself in the highest realm you can. It's okay to do it there. Absolutely okay to do it there. So.
It's a trip.
It is something else. Yeah. I'm lucky I got a chance to go. I'm grateful that I had people who have managed to get tickets for me because I never was able to get my own ticket. I paid for them, but my share, but I can never get on the list to get one. But yeah.
So we'll have to do a part 2.
Part 2. Thank you, Alex.
Hey, thanks for doing
Thank you, my brother. Good stuff.
Thanks for listening to the episode. If you enjoyed it, give me a rating and a review on any of the podcast services. Or you could go to my website, alexbhunin.com. Until the next episode, I'll explain later.